Okay, so this is the beginning of our micrography lesson. Now, in Art 1, you go over the basics of how to create value, how to draw portraits, how to use perspective, and so on. And you really learn the fundamentals of drawing. Now, in Art 2, I really like for you guys to explore what you would like to say as an artist and making meaningful art, essentially. And that's pretty much the overall theme of this entire project. And it's why I like to start with it in Art 2, just to kind of get you to start thinking about that at the very beginning of the semester. So, what do you want to say with your artwork? And I mentioned what this project was called just a second ago. And I mentioned it's called Micrography. Now, in my little example up here, that is where you guys will use words to create value. I'll go back in my last slide here. So with both of these examples, they are using words in different ways to create a range in value. Now, we talk about value in Art 1, and just a refresher on that, there's a value scale that goes from light to dark. So here's your highlights right here. Then you have your midtones, and then you work your way to your darkest value. We also talked about different methods of making or creating value in Art 1, such as hatching, cross-hatching, scumbling, and stippling. And I just want you to notice a common theme with all of these values. And that is, when you create a light value, regardless of the technique, you will separate, I guess, the method that you were using. So in this case, scumbling right here with all the scribbles, they have separated and created a larger gap in between each line. Now, as you work your way to your dark values over here, those lines get closer and closer together to create that dark value. So that happens throughout all of these examples, and honestly is the exact same method you'll use when you start using words. So in this project, I kind of took it in a literal sense. What do you want to say as an artist? Meaning, what do you want to depict? But also, what words would you say within it? In the past, I've had students use song lyrics. An example I used to show was a portrait of my mom, and I would show like all the descriptors I would say about her and like things I'd want to tell her now. So it can be as deep as you want to go with that. Honestly, the more meaningful, the better. And let me move my little video out of the way so you can see this portrait here. There we go. Now, all of these examples are very realistic, but I'm going to show you some that showing a little TikTok where they are drawing that portrait in that realism style. And if you notice, they sketch it all out in pencil first, and then they go in with the pen. So that is going to be the same process for you. And in this, they show like how far in detail they go. Great. Now, I'm sure you're watching this video and you're like, oh my goodness, Miss Beth is trying to kill us. And I'm not going to lie to you, it is a lot of work, but it has a beautiful payoff. So all of my students at the end of this project, yes, their hands are tired, but they are so, I guess, so appreciative of this experience and the fact that they learned a new method in making that's not really traditionally used. So there's the finished portrait there. And I think I have a couple more little videos like that. Okay, and then let's see the next one. And then they show the process of drawing later over and over in order to create image. And a lot of the examples are showing people, but you actually do not have to do a person at all. This example here is showing the Colosseum in Rome, so you can do a location. That is perfectly acceptable. It's meaningful to you, it is meaningful to you. Okay, now here we are getting into some student examples. I'm going to be honest, I wish I've added more examples from my previous years. These are kind of old, but however, they are still really good. So this first one here on the left is a location. I had a student from Spain, and this was a place that she really liked to go to back home. And if you can tell the difference in values, such as like here in the rocks at the bottom, that was done in Sharpie. Now I'll explain more tomorrow with the Micrography worksheet you guys will do. In that video, I'll explain the two different tools that are very helpful and that she used. So don't think you have to remember everything I say right at the moment. But anyway, yeah, she used Sharpie here. And then honestly, she probably used a Micron pen that she had herself. And then I think down over here, she used a ballpoint pen, which I'll talk about tomorrow. Over here we have a pet. This student used a ballpoint pen throughout the entire process. And again, both of these are very realistic. Let's see if my other examples. Okay, so here we get into some that are totally realism, and that one is right here. Let me move this out of the way. Which my video, or my little video right here, I would also say, yes, there's like a wide range of value here, but it's not completely realism. It's not super hyper realistic. Same with this, these two portraits here. And the big difference between this portrait and this portrait is these two artists are capturing value in a completely different way. So over here, the values are much flatter, whereas over here, they are trying to capture more of like the dimensions of the face here and those lighter values. Both of these are great, just two totally different styles, and both work. So you can go any route that you wish. So we have two portraits there, and then we also have this tree, and I believe Erin made this. And I want to say that this was the tree that her parents or her grandparents got married under, or it was like a favorite like family tree, and it just turned out beautiful. I believe she gave it to her grandfather as a gift. So anyway, just to show you, you do not have to do people. And then here's some more examples. Let me move this out of the way again. Something I haven't talked about yet is your reference photo. You have to use your own reference photo. Now, this wasn't very critical in Art 1, at least not in my class. However, in Art 2, it's much more expected. Just because you guys are creating or becoming original artists, which means you need to have an original reference source. So, yeah, all of these pictures came from someone's camera roll. So for instance here, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Gray used a childhood photo of her and her dad. And then again, just making sure that she's getting all ranges of values and creating a beautiful artwork. Now, something that is lacking here is a background, so make sure you have a background. I'm going to point at Gray's example again. You do not have to do small words the entire time. If you go larger, just make sure your words look intentional. So gray here is going around her and her dad, and it's really creating a very interesting composition or visual interest. So yeah, make sure you create some type of background. Don't just fill in your subject matter and then call it a day. Also, you guys aren't working on super large paper like these students were, so make sure you fill in that whole sheet of paper. Okay, so let me go to that next slide. Oh, I guess I have more examples. Here's just another example where they're using that large word font, and they're making it look really intentional. So again, not super hyper realistic, it's more stylized, but this method is super great as well. I will be honest though, this is probably the method that students struggle with the most, just because drawing words in this stylized manner can sometimes be difficult. And those were examples from the internet. These are not student examples. Okay, so as far as grading goes, this is what we're going to be looking for. First, you need to choose your own reference photo. Don't pull something from the internet. It has to be yours. Okay. After that, you must have a personally meaningful theme. On the back of your artwork, you're going to explain why you created this piece and what words you used. So make sure you're thinking about it beforehand because you are going to have to explain it at the end. You are using Sharpies and pens, which is kind of a given, but my best advice is don't try to do your whole artwork in pencil and then be like, oh goodness, I forgot to go in pen. So just make sure you're using that pen and Sharpie. And then last but not least, but also pretty much the main point in this project, other than the meaningful theme, is to use the full value range. So make sure you have dark values and midtones and highlights, okay? Because if you don't have that full range of value. Okay, so this is pretty much discussing due dates. I'm sure Ms. Hamby will remind you guys as these days approach. However, if you look at the first two bullet points, you have two things actually due tomorrow. So the first one, which you're going to start on today, and that is to create two differing sketches of your ideas. Each sketch is a half a page in size, and this will be due at the end of class. Okay, so you will have today and tomorrow to finish your sketches, and I'll show you some of my examples of sketches so you can kind of get a visual of what expectations are. And then your next one that's due tomorrow, it's actually due right before midnight, and that is to upload your reference photo. So to submit it in Google Classroom tomorrow night, really. So August 12th. This is a grade. I believe I put in Google Classroom each day that it's not turned in, that is 10 points deducted. So make sure you turn it in. That's an easy 100. And again, all you have to do is upload a photo from your camera roll. And if you feel like you don't have a good photo and you need to take one, just make sure to take one of the 11th or 12th. So those are two things that are due right away. And then the project is due on the 19th. And I know I'm going to talk about it in my syllabus video. I haven't made it yet. But in my syllabus, I state that I take work a week after, mostly projects. I take projects a week after the due date. I do not count off for late work. But after that week, I do not look at it. So you have a week to turn in your project. I know I'm a late or kind of a slow worker sometimes, so I definitely don't like to take away points or deduct any points if your work is like 2 or 3 days late. That's perfectly fine with me. I would rather you take your time on this than rush it at the end. If you have to take materials home, just let Ms. Hamby know. And yeah, so that is this project. And let me go over my sketches. But before I do, I have one more slide, I believe. And that is the questions that you will write on the back of your artwork. And that is, how is your artwork representing a personally meaningful theme? How did you choose to write? Or what did you choose to write and why? And how was your experience creating this artwork? Make sure you answer these questions in pencil. I'll try to remind you in Google Classroom to do this, just so it doesn't bleed through your artwork. Okay, so I think that's my last slide. Yeah, I think all these are old. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to end it right there. And then let me pull this to make it a little bit larger. Okay, so here's Reagan's example. I guess I'll show you these examples while I'm here. I'll show you more of these in the next video where I talk about how to accomplish the micrography technique. Here is Bailey's example. And then let's see if I can focus this a little bit better. Not the best quality, but we'll take it. Here is Cora's video, or not video, artwork. I believe this was a time that she went to Charleston with her dad. So very meaningful. It was beautifully written on the back. So this is an example of her answering your questions on the back. And then have Avery's example. So these were just recently turned in this year. Okay, let me go to my sketches here to kind of show you my expectations. So here are my two sketches. And again, make sure your sketches are half a page. So both of them should fit on one page. And I want to show you my two examples because I approached each sketch a little bit differently. Now, my first sketch is a little bit rougher. My theme here is I chose a picture of me and my husband. This is a picture when we first bought our house. Our house is actually would be in the background. And we recreated like the scene of, oh my goodness, I'm forgetting that movie. 13 Going on 30. If you haven't seen it, it's a good movie. But anyway, so what I did was I created my sketch first in pencil, and then I started practicing the micrography technique. I would definitely recommend you doing this on your sketch, whichever one you decide, just so you can kind of get a little bit of practice with working with the micrography technique with something more complex. Okay, so that's my first sketch. And then my second sketch is more recently, and I didn't use the micrography technique. However, I did find my values. So this is a maternity picture, and it's a very meaningful time in my life. So I wanted to make sure or have it as an option to, I guess, create a meaningful artwork. But anyway, I used a different technique here where I just shaded it as normal, but this is also a great way because I'm still trying to find my dark values, my midtones, and my highlights. So with your sketches, take your time on them. You would have today, and then again, they will be due tomorrow, August 12th, at the end of class. Okay. One last thing I want to mention before this video ends is when you choose your photo, you can either one, freehand it, or two, you can grid it. I know I go over gridding. I know Coach Crouch goes over gridding. But I will be posting a video on how to do the grid method. So just know that that option is available for you. All right, so that is the Micrography project. I hope this video was helpful, and you guys have a great time creating some great art. Bye.